Hello class, by now you should be pretty familiar with domain names, so today we will be learning about web hosting. Just like domain names, a good web developer needs to know and be very familiar with web hosting, as you are expected to know and select the appropriate hosting solution based on the size of your website project, the website requirements, and the client's needs or wants. The most common types of web hosting you will work with are the following. First, we have shared hosting. Shared hosting is your entry-level hosting. This is what you typically get with major hosting platforms like GoDaddy, HostMonster, Bluehost, etc. Now, these platforms probably also offer other types of hosting, but their main product, the one that is advertised for like $4.95 per month, will most likely be shared. Shared hosting is usually very affordable and great for small websites that don't get a ton of visitors or don't require too many resources. In a shared hosting environment, your website is stored on the same server with multiple other websites. The downside to shared hosting is that all the resources on the server, like RAM and CPU, are being shared. So even if your website is small and does not require a lot of resources, there might be other websites on that server that do take up a lot of resources or get a lot of traffic, making your website run slower or simply just be inconsistent, where sometimes it's really slow, sometimes it's really fast. Most websites, especially for small businesses, will run perfectly fine on a shared hosting environment. However, keep in mind that not all shared hosting is equal. Some providers might run 500 websites to server, while others might run 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, depending on how big. So just keep that in mind. Your average cost for web hosting are typically $5 to $50 per month, depending on the specifications, how much storage size, and all that stuff. The next step up from shared hosting would be a virtual private server. VPS hosting is the middle ground between shared hosting and an actual dedicated server. Your website would still be on the same server as multiple other websites, however, it would be on its own allocated space. Performance could still be affected by other users, but it would be less likely. Most importantly, a VPS server would give you additional management options of your server if you needed. It's obviously a little more expensive. Average cost would be around $50 to $150, again, depending on the specifications. And obviously, we have dedicated hosting. A dedicated server would be fully dedicated to your website, and you would have full control over everything on that server, from operating system to security and all other options. A dedicated server is ideal for websites that need to support large amounts of traffic and use a lot of resources, or companies that need full control of the options available. However, they are also some of the most costly web hosting options and require a great deal of expertise to manage. The average cost could be anywhere from $150 to $300, $400, $500 per month, again, depending on the specifications and how big this server is. Now, most of you have probably heard of cloud hosting. Cloud is a new buzzword in the industry and has many great advantages. Some of the major cloud hosting providers you've probably heard of are Google Cloud and Amazon Oz. Cloud hosting works by having multiple servers working together, running your website or application by combining their resources, making it highly scalable. The resources that are being used are spread over multiple servers. Most importantly, since cloud hosting can scale to almost any resources needed, the customer is only charged for what they use. This makes it an ideal hosting solution for websites or applications that have high volumes of traffic consistently, and for websites that have inconsistent traffic and that only need their resources to scale for a short periods of time. For example, let's say we have a music festival website. Now, that website might not receive much traffic throughout the year, but it can get insane amounts of traffic the month leading up to the festival, and especially the day of, and maybe a little bit afterward. In a scenario like this, with inconsistent amounts of traffic, cloud hosting can be a great solution, as it can allow the festival website to have as many resources as they need during the busy months and immediately scale down once the resources are no longer needed, saving them money throughout the year. In summary, here you could see a few graphics showing the shared hosting. As you could see, you have a dedicated server, so many server resources, and then multiple websites that are inside that server. In a VPS hosting environment, we take those server resources and we allocate them to virtual private machines, and each site has its own allocated resources, but those resources are still shared within that server. With a dedicated server, you have your dedicated server, and all those resources are only allocated to one site. Now, I took the graphic of the cloud hosting, I flipped it a little bit upside down because it's almost the opposite of shared hosting. So rather than having one server handling tons of websites, you have tons of servers handling one website.